Honourable Speaker, I move that Parliament debates the report of the annual review of the iTaukei Trust Fund Board 2017, which was tabled on 1st April 2019. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Honourable Speaker, sir, I second the motion.
I now invite the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Social Affairs to speak on the motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the iTaukei Trust Fund Board was established by the Fiji government to foster advancement of the indigenous Fijians and Rotumas by promoting initiatives that will better their standard of living and enhance appropriate cultural traditions and values. The objectives of the board are to provide funding for the undertaking, promotion and sponsoring programs on iTaukei culture, language and the study of ethno-history and ethno-geography, to provide funding to help develop the management, leadership and entrepreneurial skills of the indigenous iTaukei and Rotumas, to sponsor research into languages, art and culture of the iTaukei and Rotumans and the better understanding and the preservation of their heritage, and to undertake any other purpose approved by the board to be beneficial to the iTaukei and Rotumans. As of 31st December 2017, the board had a full complement of 8 members. This enabled the formation of 3 subcommittees to scrutinize papers before final consideration by the board. Through this, standards were established to ensure transparency, access to independent professional advice, and code of conduct. The 3 subcommittees include the following: investment and finance, culture and heritage, governance, and human resources. Furthermore, the major achievements of the board in 2017 were the Fijian dictionary projects, including the e-Walabosa app. The app was completed and the Android version was launched on 19 December 2017. The curriculum on traditional leadership and governance, titled Sau Waki Ni Vanua, was approved and registered by the Fiji Higher Education Commission as a certificate 3-level course. In collaboration with the iTaukei Institute of Language and Culture, 2 new comics of Fijian folk tales, Dere Vulakata and Dimailangi, were illustrated as comic print productions. To conclude, the iTaukei Trust Fund Board managed to fulfill its legislative objectives in 2017. We commend the board for the positive impact made on the indigenous communities through the language, culture and heritage programs. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank the Honourable Chair. Honourable members, the floor is now open for debate on the motion. Honourable Jale, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I thank the Standing Committee on Social Affairs on this report. The reports by the Standing Committee of Parliament are very important, Mr. Speaker, sir, because they are indicators of performance of organizations and departments. And I think it's important that the report should capture the performance of those organizations and departments as far as the delivery of key result areas, the monitoring mechanism in place to see that the plan of government captured in the National Development Plan are featured and achieved. For Parliament, it's important also that we be able to review the resources that we are providing these departments and organizations, whether they've been put to good use or not. And I feel that these reports should have also captured this. There are 9 areas in the report that this committee reported on. I'm not going to talk about all of that, all of those. It talks about administration, the policies, and the challenges and highlights that this board has gone through during this period of report. This is a report on a board, Mr. Chair, and I feel that the report should have captured the governance aspect of this trust fund board. It's a board. I would have expected this report to have covered things like the board members and how they are performing. Who are they? Are they the right people to be in the board? Because it's very important for accountability and transparency that we have the right people in place to manage affairs of government and also the use of the government resources. There were recommendations that were included in the report, Honorable Speaker, sir. Page 7 of the report says that there is a shortage of specialized skills in language and heritage areas. The question is, how long has this been in place? How long has this problem been in place? What is the recommendation by the committee to be able to address the shortfall and this need? The report didn't capture anything of that nature. But I feel for the reports of committees, when we identify areas to be improved, there need to be some recommendation on what to be done. And that will be very helpful too, Honorable Speaker, sir, to this department, in particularly those organizations and departments. I know that I was in government before. The reports of this committee are scrutinized by departments very carefully so that we can learn from and do what are necessary to be done. On page 7 also, Honorable Speaker, sir, it says the challenges the board faces in terms of investment opportunities are citing the need to review the iTaukei Trust Fund Act 2004 to conform with the Trustees Act 1948. The problem, as they show, as highlighted in the report, is cannot make an investment in any company that has not provided any dividends in the last 5 years, and also the board is not able to invest in companies that have negative social impacts and on families and society. Again, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would expect committees to have come up with some sort of solution in this report. My remarks, Honorable Speaker, sir, should be seen as something to improve how we address our role as committees of this department, of this parliament, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That is my contribution.
I thank the honourable member, and I give the floor to the Honourable Anare Jale, Yoni Barabi. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. The Honourable Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Leader of Opposition, Members of Cabinet, and Honourable Members of the House. I would like to contribute to the debate this morning on the iTaukei Trust Fund Annual Report for 2017. First, I'd like to thank the Chairperson of the committee and members of the committee for the report before the House. The Trust Fund, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fijians Trust Fund, was a creation of the Mboselewu Duranga at its meeting in 2001. It first started as a trust with the objective of ensuring the autonomy of the Mboselewa Turanga, or the Great Council of Chiefs. And it also ensures the promotion and protection of indigenous culture and heritage, Mr. Speaker, sir. I note that this was changed in 2017 when it was administered under an Act of Parliament. The committee has noted on page 6 of their report that the core business of the fund is to enhance, enrich and promote the quality of life, culture, leadership, entrepreneurial knowledge and skills of iTaukei and Otomans. It has moved away from the initial focus of the establishment of the trust fund. It was supposed to look very closely into how indigenous Fijians, or the first people of the nation, can protect and promote their tradition and culture. I note the various activities that have been carried out by those that are managing the Fijians Trust Fund now. The Mboselewa Turanga, in ensuring that the trust fund has investment funds to enable it to carry out the initial objective of the trust, had provided that 10 million shares in Fijians Trust Fund, and that allowed the Fijians Trust Fund its initial seed capital to finance the objectives of the trust fund. The 20 million shares in Fijian Holdings that was funded by government was divided between the trust fund for 10 million, and the remaining 14 provincial councils shared the 10 million shares in Fijian Holdings. It was the 10 million shares in Fijian Holdings that was transferred to the Fijians Trust Fund that created the initial seed capital to allow the Fijians Trust Fund to carry out or to implement programs to ensure the attainment of the first objectives of the trust fund. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, sir, I note the programs that have been implemented by the trust. Whilst I commend the fact that the trust fund has not been removed by the military government at that time, it is continuing to be in existence, and it's contributing on the preservation of the culture of the First Nations, or the first people of this nation, in some small way, contributing to Fiji's obligations of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. That declaration is the affirmation of the fundamental human rights of the indigenous people of Fiji to manage their own resources and institutions. To me, I view it as a form of a lip service to the need for our people to continue to appreciate our culture, our tradition, and the apex of the Fijian administration, of the Fijian people in the Mboselewa Turanga. Unfortunately, the building that was paid for by the Fijians Trust Fund is no longer the hallmark of our country. A lot of work, intricate work, was carried out to ensure that the Mboselewa Turanga complex in Raimba came out the way it was, utilizing fine tradition and culture, handicraft, choices of timber, to ensure that the tradition culture is represented in the Valley in Mboselewa Turanga. We understand that expression of interest has been put out in the reconstruction of that complex. Mr. Speaker, sir, whether it'll be preserved again for the Great Council of Chiefs, we do not know. We do not know whether some consultations have been carried out with the Fijian people on their views into the type of structure the reform or the new Valley Mboselewa Turanga will look like. It is unfortunate that this has not happened. I note the continuing good performance of the Fijians Trust Fund, and I'd like to congratulate the Chief Executive Officer and the members of the Trust Fund, the employees. I note, sir, that a lot of emphasis has been put on the continuing education, improving the education qualifications of those that are working in the Trust Fund. Whilst I appreciate that, I'd like to ask this Honourable House that the Fijians Trust Fund should do more work to ensure that the indigenous people, the first people of this nation, continue to value, appreciate, and promote matters about our tradition and culture. When I spoke on this same subject, I think in 2018, I had pleaded with the House that the Honourable Minister for Fijian Affairs, the Honourable Prime Minister, consider establishing, or perhaps we can begin with the Nandave Development Center in Taro, Niambao. We should consider establishing tertiary studies to be undertaken by our people so that our people understand who we are. Why do we have Matangalis? Why do we have Evusa? Their roles, their responsibilities. That can be better done if our people go through some form of tertiary education that will allow them better understanding, sir, of the Fijian way of life. We are a distinct people, the first people of this nation. We need to continue to protect our identity. We understand that we are living in Fiji. We value multiracialism, Honourable Speaker. But first of all, we need to ensure that our culture, our tradition is protected, is understood by our young people, so that we continue to have our separate identity, Mr. Speaker, sir. I note, sir, that there are some forms of training being carried out, Volini Sauni Vanua, etc. While that is good, sir, the root of the problem needs to be addressed. And the problem is that we need to do more for our people, for our younger Fijian, the first people of the nation, sir. We need to ensure that they understand and they value, and that can only be done if you have a tertiary institution to ensure that they come out with certificates, diploma, degrees, even PhD. I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, sir, because in New Zealand, the Maoris are doing it. They have established the Wananga, where Maoris learn about themselves, the intellectual capacity. Itaukei, it needs to be captured, it needs to be appreciated. And it can only be done if we have an institution that teaches all this to our young people. I'd like to suggest that the ministry considers Nandave, that development center in Taro, Niambao, to start off the training sessions for our young people who want to know more, who want to value, who want to understand, and who will want to continue to promote their identity, Mr. Speaker, sir. Therefore, I endorse the comments that have been made by my honourable colleague this morning, the need to do more. We are told that there are 8 board members. We are not told the qualifications of the board members. Are they equipped? Do they have the passion to enable the program of the Fijians Trust Fund to realize the initial objectives that were set out by the Mbosili Turang? I am pleading with the Honourable Prime Minister, Kemni, Minister for Fijian Affairs. We need to review. We need to review the program of action with the Fijians Trust Fund. And I'd like to ask that we acknowledge the decision of the Mbosile Turanga in 2001 to establish the trust fund with those noble objectives. We cannot just put it aside. Mbosile Turanga is going to remain as an institute that is revered and respected by the first people of this nation. There's more to be said, Mr. Speaker, sir, but I'll end there. I think some of my colleagues would like to contribute to this motion. And I thank you for the opportunity, sir.
I thank the honourable member for her contribution to the debate. I now give the floor to the honourable Prime Minister. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, sir, I thank Honourable Viam Pillay for the motion. Honourable Speaker, the Fijian government has outlined in its 5-year and 20-year National Development Plan key development priorities which include the protection and promotion of unique Fijian culture, cultural heritage for sustainable development. The iTaukei Trust Fund Board plays, the TTFB plays a pivotal role in ensuring the advancement of the iTaukei and Rotumans by promoting initiatives that will imitate the standard of living and enhance appropriate cultural traditions and values. As alluded to in the TTFB Annual Report 2017 has been a good year for TTFB in terms of the fulfillment of its legislated objectives, particularly the various projects on language, culture and heritage developed in that year. Some of these programs, Mr. Speaker, are worth noting, such as the research on somate or traditional funeral practices, focusing on the impact of these practices on the cultural, economic and religious well-being of indigenous Fijians. And other practices have been translated into Wasavakaviti and submitted to the iTaukei Affairs Board for dissemination and awareness. The curriculum on traditional leadership and governance, titled Sawakini Vanua, has been approved and registered by the Fiji Higher Education Commission as a Certificate 3 level course. The 14-week course, Mr. Speaker, is written and taught in the iTaukei language. The offering of the course at the Center for Appropriate Technology and Development at Nandawe started in November. As the course targets the successes of traditional leaders, the first class of 23 consisted of successors from the Televu and Rewa provinces. Cohorts of students made up of school teachers and another of the Ministry of iTaukei Affairs staff undertaking the Diploma in Vernacular Studies continued with a total of 6 courses. In collaboration with the iTaukei Institute of Language and Culture, Honourable Speaker, 2 new comics of Fijian folk tales, Devlakata and O Dimailangi, excuse me, are being illustrated as comic print productions. Illustrator Tulevuka Lendua was retained for the work. In collaboration with the iTaukei Institute of Language and Culture, 3 new short bilingual books for children have been published. Lasasanga is written in Rotuma in English, while Kusima, enjoying fish, and Kakanandina and the market root crops at the market are written in iTaukei and English. The books, Honourable Speaker, will be launched and sold. They are a result of the Information Text Awareness Project run in collaboration with the International Development in Oceanic Committee of the International Literacy Association. Consultant Mr. Fergus Clooney continues the researching of the Ring Ditch fortification at the Waindamundamu heritage site located in Lolotalo Beach Estate. The final report is expected to be available and will include guidelines and recommendations for the formation of a heritage exhibition site. In partnership with the Sainsbury Research Unit at the University of East Anglia in the UK, 2 members of the staff were part of the Fijian Heritage team invited by the SRU to the UK for a 2-week study visited on international awareness on museology practices. On their return, Mr. Speaker, the staff collaborated with other Fijian Museum team members to create an exhibition titled Kamunanga, a study of Tambua. The exhibition was launched by His Excellency the President of Fiji on 15 June. Due to its relevance to the wider Fijian community, it has since been opened to the public. Also, in partnership with SRU, a field workers network was established. The network would be an important part of the research that will inform exhibitions at the planned cultural center on the intangible cultural heritage of the uniqueness of each Vanua in Fiji. An active citizens approach to the training of field workers representing the 9 tikinas was conducted for the group of field workers who represented the 9 districts of the Vanua of Rewa. A Canon DSLR camera with accessories was brought to assist in the documentation of field data. Funding for projects held in partnership with the SRU is the grant of $20,521 from the UK Art and Humanities Research Council through the SRU. TTFB, Mr. Speaker, became the implementing partner in Fiji for the British Council Active Citizens Program. AC is the British Council Global Social Leadership Training Program that builds skills in intercultural awareness, problem solving, and mentored community engagement. At the core of active citizens is a methodology that combines empowerment in connectivity and global awareness with community development through social action projects. In terms of investment, Mr. Speaker, TTFB is currently working on a business enterprise framework which targets the development of resources such as forestry, land, and other resource sectors. Mr. Speaker, sir, this government has been driving development with respect to cultural and heritage, leaving no one behind as part of our goals in the National Development Plan. I thank you.
I thank the Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Nawaikula.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. What the Prime Minister was reading out then were some of the outcomes of the iTaukei Trust Fund Board. He was talking about the Kamunanga, which is a study. He was talking about Kusima, which is a short story. He was talking about Ndrebulakata. You might remember, Honourable Speaker, when we were young, Ndrebulakata and Fijivillage and Fijivillage. And after all these years, I'm going to turn 60 now, this year. They've only managed to write one book on Ndrebulakata. And I'm asking myself, what about the many Ndrebulakatas in all societies? And the Prime Minister appears to be saying, this is in line with the government's 5-year plan to protect and promote unique Fijian culture. How contradictory, how ironic can you be? If the Prime Minister wants to be serious on that, he should go look at UNDRIP, UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights. It will guide his government on what to do if he's serious about the protection and promotion of the uniqueness of Fijian culture. So that's total hogwash coming from the Prime Minister to be saying that. To be saying at the one hand, they're not even supporting it. This is an independent institution. It's not even government. And I ask why is it coming here? TLTB does not present its annual report to the Parliament for the basic reason that it is unique. It is part of the cultural autonomy of the Fijian people. They report there. They don't bring it here. So it is ironic. It is contradictory for the Prime Minister to be saying that on the one hand, and to be terminating the Great Council of Chiefs on the other, and to be nationalizing the provincial councils on the other. So you can't say that you are promoting and protecting the uniqueness of Fijian culture if you are saying this, and on the one hand, you're cutting that out. You are forbidding us talking in our mother tongue here. So let's be frank. Well, I have read it, so, there's a few other comments that I wish to say in relation to this, and the point that I wish to say is that this institution has not done enough. It has not done enough. Sure, there are these things here, and it feels like the Fijian culture is a dead culture. Fijian culture is not a dead culture. We are living our culture. We don't need researchers like this. We need to teach our people to live it. How do we do that? You introduce this into the education curriculum, so they know it. We don't want it written so that you can come back and read it. Like, it's not academic. We are living it. And the fear for us is that very soon, if we do not do enough, we will lose it. We will lose our language. We will lose all the idioms and the stories of the Meke. So I also asked the Fijian Trust Fund, have they taken account of all the history, of all our tradition? For the main fact that it is oral tradition. If you don't write it down, if you don't go to each village and write down all the Mekes in this village, and all the idioms, and all the old stories in this village, and all the songs and all the dances, you will lose it. That's why I'm saying that the Fijian Trust Fund is not doing enough. You need not do research. First, take a stock take. If they care to go to the intellectual properties conferences overseas, they would advise them, first and foremost, take stock. Because oral tradition is oral. If you don't write it down, if you don't record it, it will be lost. And that is the fear that we have. And this is not addressing it. It's not addressing it. It's not doing enough. If you look at the mandated objectives of this of the trust fund, it says this. There are four: to provide funding for the undertaking, promotion, and sponsoring of programs of iTaukei language. Now, if we do that, how can? But here in the parliament, we are forbidding us to say it. So how can you be serious in relation to that? You don't promote iTaukei language if you forbid us here to speak my mother tongue. And then it goes on to provide funding to help the management and leadership and to sponsor research, languages, art, and the culture of the iTaukei and Ratumans. So I'm saying that this institution is not doing enough. I have asked time and time again, who will go out to the village communities to write down their songs, to write down their dances? Is it the responsibility of ITLTB? No. Is it the responsibility of the iTaukei Affairs Board? No. Yeah. But here we have, it's their responsibility, but they're not doing it. Where is the archives of all the stories? Where is the archives of all the Mekes? Where is the archives of all this? There is nothing in the ministry. Order. Honorable Minister, you go to the ministry, there is nothing there. There is nothing in the ministry. There is no recorder.
Order.
We hear it all and over again. Bremulakata and Tumbuna, Rainivele, only two. But you go to the villages, they have their own Bremulakata, they have their own stories, they have their own Mekes, which by now they are gone. So that is the serious point that I wish to say here, Honorable Sir. You're not doing enough. The other point that I wish to raise is the actions by this government to interfere with the purpose of this honored body, the trust fund. If you look at this trust, the trust fund was established in 2004, and very clearly, the act that established it said, no, I'll read it out. I have 20 minutes. The purpose, to establish a trust fund for Fijian settlement to provide financial autonomy to the Mosilewa Keturanga to an income for the purposes of the fund in related matters. That is the purpose. to provide for the cultural autonomy. And here you have a government that passed a law to take that away, to cut out the cut out the link. And that's in total breach of indigenous rights, of their rights. You know, there are two rights. First right is that you have to protect culture, and the government must do all it says. And if the government does not do that, you go read ILO C-169, you go read UNTIP. Every time it sets out, this is a right, protect culture. And it sets out, second to that, the government will do its best endeavors to do that. And here, it hasn't done that. First, it terminated the Great Council of Chiefs, and then it terminated its source of income from here. And the breach that I'm saying here is that if they care to read the rights, you have to get the prior informed consent of the indigenous people before you change any legislation. This was not done in that way. Indigenous people were not consulted. Indigenous people did not consent to the nationalization of this institution. Now, by nationalization I mean government now decides who sits in those boards. It has taken away our right to self-determination, to decide for ourselves. That is a breach of UNTIP, which is our human rights, the group rights of indigenous people. I know they don't agree with that, but you know, it's common sense. If something belongs to us, you don't just change it by a law, you ask for permission. And did they do it here? They did not do it here. They have nationalized it. They have taken total control of it. And that is in breach of our right to give our prior and informed consent before they pass this legislation. And I'm saying, shame on them for doing that. And the other point of concern, Honorable Speaker, that I wish to say here, and I wish also to say, you know, public would be listening, is that the selfishness of how they did this. You know, before, in the Ngarase government, when legislation was declared null and void, they had to be passed through the next parliament to legalize it. Here, no. They had a provision in the constitution that says all these decrees that were designed to terminate the right of indigenous people in this country, to nationalize their interest, for example, the termination of the Great Council of Chiefs, it will not be required to pass through a parliament like this. That is sad. And I wish for our sons to remember that, because we may not be here. They have to correct all these anomalies. They have to correct all these lacunas in our laws. Thank you.
I thank the honourable. The last speaker on this side from is the Honourable Tikoduadua. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I bring with me commendations from the back from your Maramaneta that you actually look better from the back from where we are seated, so we thank you for it.
You're the exception, Honourable.
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want, first of all, I want to thank the committee for their report, and a lot has been said about the iTaukei Trust Fund and the issues of the iTaukei in the House this morning. I thought I'll make my 5 minutes contribution to it. And the contribution I would like to make to this debate is about the issue of the bill on traditional knowledge and cultural expression. The learned Attorney General would know very well that in some of the addresses made by His Excellency the President, our current President, alluded to the bill being tabled in the House during the term of the House that the President made those utterances when opening the session of Parliament. Now, Mr. Speaker, that bill is not before the House. Now, many aspirations of the iTaukei, particularly the recognition of knowledge, cultural expressions, would be included in that bill. And one of the major benefits from it is that the Fijian of iTaukei descent, if you want to be politically correct in that sense, will be able to benefit economically from their rights, from their knowledge. Now, I believe some time back there was a lot of debate on the motive on the back of Fiji Airways and who it belonged to and who actually should benefit from that knowledge as it appeared. And of course, Fiji as a nation has benefited a lot from it. Of course, that is renowned for many indigenous communities in Fiji, from Laos and also from the Western Division, dealing in this kind of motives. But I know this has been a long delayed bill, and it would be really, really good, and it would address a lot of the issues before the iTaukei today, particularly in the funding and financing, a lot of those things that the Fijian communities would like to do through not only the protection of these intellectual properties, but for them to be able, the iTaukei community, wherever this knowledge belongs, needs to be able to use those rights, to be able to use the benefits of which for their own community, particularly now. Now, the new COVID norm places a lot of difficulties and challenge to all of our communities, and the iTaukei for that matter in the rural. And we all take our time to go to the rural and the rural communities and our villages, and I live there for one. And we see the difficulties faced by our communities, particularly now when the rural communities are not being able to sell their produce for the price they want in the market. Now, this is an additional source of income and protected under the law. And the Book of Wakabiti, and the name that they call it now, and that I think that is the name that the iTaukei Affairs today calls intellectual property and cultural expression, is one of those things, Honorable Speaker, that the nation of Fiji has benefited as a whole. It is only right and it is only fair that for those who are the source of this intellectual property be given the benefits that is deserved of them, particularly if there are monetary benefits from it that the nation is benefiting. So, and I believe the traditional knowledge and cultural expression, I would like to ask government, particularly the Attorney General, to hasten the process to have the bill presented before the House. Thank you, Speaker.
I thank the Honourable Speaker. Honourable Attorney General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd just like to make a few comments in respect of this particular report by the subcommittee. I'd like to thank them for the committee, for their work also. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Nawaikula, in his usual pugnacious manner, forgot to mention and read out the other mission statements and indeed the vision statement of the iTaukei Trust Fund, which includes, of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, to prudently invest the TTF funds to earn superior returns while complying with the iTaukei Trust Fund Act to enhance the long-term value of the trust. As you know, Mr. Speaker, sir, the buildings around that heritage building itself, where the office is situated, also has premises that are leased out to government. I'd like to refer the honourable members, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the actual accounts that are presented in the annual report itself. And Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at the figures themselves, the investment that has been carried out by the new board, Mr. Speaker, sir, that was appointed by government, obviously is paying dividends. If you look at the total comprehensive income, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you compare 2017 to 2016, it actually jumped from 5.6 million to $13.38 million, Mr. Speaker, sir. Similarly, the total equity increased from 93 million to $107 million, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, the total dividends, and if you see the investments that are carried out, the dividends, Mr. Speaker, sir, slightly increased as you can see on page 37 of the report, there are a number of investments that are offshore, predominantly in Australia, from investments such as like Woolworths and Westpac, etc. And I'd urge the honourable members to actually look at these investments and to understand that this is the predominant focus of this particular trust fund. That's why it is actually called a trust fund. And the focus is on investments. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, similarly on pages 38 and 39 of the report, it lays down in detail the asset value of the entity. Honourable Jale talked about investment opportunities. Mr. Speaker, sir, the number of investment opportunities have been created by government, as the Honourable Prime Minister highlighted, through the 5 and 20-year development plan. A number of the initiatives that have been put out in respect of investment, for example, in warehousing, hotels, these all provide opportunities for the trust fund to actually invest. And they had been looking at some hotel sites in Suva. As you know, there's a shortage of room inventory in Suva in particular. So they're looking at those types of investments. Of course, with the current climate, they would be hesitant to do so. But I bring again the kind of obfuscation and the disingenuity of the Honourable Nawaikula when he simply focused on the so-called only focus of cultural practices being the focus of the iTaukei Trust Fund. But what he failed to, Mr. Speaker, sir, mention, that if you look at the budget book, if you look at the Ministry of iTaukei Affairs, for example, he talked about the oral traditions, oral culture being lost. There has actually been a cultural mapping exercise that actually has been going on, and it has been highlighted in this Parliament on a number of occasions, where the staff from the Ministry of iTaukei Affairs, particularly the iTaukei Institute of Language and Culture, has been going out to each of the provinces, each of the landowning units, looking at each of the cultural practices that have been taking place, and have actually been documenting it. He knows that. But he stood up there and misled Parliament. And again, in the budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget announced in last year, and I've got the book here with me, cultural mapping program, $250,000, cultural mapping verification, review of the iTaukei dictionary, special revitalization program, cultural awareness iTaukei festival, library records. This is the only country, among the very few countries in the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, and again this was highlighted in Parliament, where all the climate change phraseologies, the terms, have all been translated into iTaukei language. It's so up to date, where all those climatic change issues have been actually translated into iTaukei language. So I cannot understand what the honourable member is going on. Again, he's sort of gone off the track regarding the report itself, which is focused actually on the financial aspects of this trust fund, and gone off and made references again to ILO, which is 69, which is again not relevant, 169. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to now get back to the contribution by Honourable Tikoduadua. He's absolutely right that traditional knowledge and protection of intellectual property is very, very important. In fact, Cabinet only a few weeks ago presented for bills to be presented to Parliament on trademarks, designs and patents. And we have been working with WIPO, as it's known, WIPO. And Honourable Tikoduadua in his term with the Ministry of Justice would know this. And we had numerous discussions about this, about how we need to actually protect traditional knowledge. It's not only about protecting designs or motifs on airlines, but it's also about actually things like herbal medicines. I mean, who's going to own the intellectual property? And we've seen throughout the world, for example, the very famous case about the neem tree, when an American company went into India and took away the intellectual property rights regarding the neem tree. Numerous other cases in Africa and various other jurisdictions where that type of intellectual theft has taken place. So we are very much keen on that. In fact, we are working with WIPO, with WIPO at this point in time. And of course, given COVID-19, they have slowed down a bit. But we are working on that, and we hope to bring together with we're doing things like the Madrid Protocol, and again they'll be presented to Parliament in due course, in respect of Fiji signing up to the Madrid Protocol and the Paris Convention, which actually allows recognition of trademarks, patents, intellectual property across borders without actually physically going there. So once you become part of the Madrid system, you are, through the recognized officers, being able to get their registration done. And there's a mutual recognition of that recognition of the intellectual property and trademarks. So there is a lot of work being done behind the scenes in that respect, and we hope to get the WIPO input into it, because we need to ensure that whatever bill or law subsequently be approved by this parliament is not only about pacifying those people within Fiji, but it's also about ensuring that we get actual recognition across borders. There's no point putting a law in Fiji when nobody else outside the jurisdiction actually will recognize it. So we need that recognition, because generally the theft of indigenous knowledge, theft of traditional culture, theft of intellectual property emanating from traditional medicine, etc., is done by those outside the country. So we need to ensure that we are able to adhere to all those or subscribe to the various conventions outside the jurisdiction, so then we can get international recognition and indeed more so protection of that intellectual property. So Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to once again with those brief remarks thank the committee once again for the input, and I look forward to the members when we debate these matters to actually focus on the report themselves as opposed to meandering along. Thank you.